Humphrey Bogart's name stands out as an iconic figure in the rich weave of classic Hollywood, where many legendary figures have left their mark. Bogart was the perfect example of a famous Hollywood star. He was tough and serious at the same time, and he had a romantic side to him. Here, stories didn't stop on the screen. They went into real life. But what made his name stick in history? What made him so talented? His career was built on classic parts like Rick Blaine in Casablanca and Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon. Or was it the complicated stories of his personal life, full of shady relationships, that made him into a movie legend? Humphrey Bogart wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol of two opposites. A cold youth, failed marriages, and a controversial relationship with Lauren Bacall were just a few of the dark sides of his life. The real man came out when Hollywood glitz couldn't hide everything. He was strong, sensitive, and deeply hurt. Let's look into the life of Humphrey Bogart, a man who lived in two very different worlds, the flash of fame and the real world, and the darkness of secrets that not many people knew. Humphrey DeForest Bogart was born in New York City on Christmas Day, 1899, into a rich and powerful family. His dad, Belmont DeForest Bogart, was a famous heart surgeon, and his mom, Maud Humphrey, was a great artist who made more money than her husband from her work for big magazines, in contrast to the standards of the time. But having a lot of money couldn't fill Bogart's mental void in his early years. Because both of his parents were very busy with their jobs and keeping up their social image, they made the home life of their children cold and distant, where love and affection seemed like extravagances. Maud kept her son at a safe distance because she was driven and had a strong will. She even told Humphrey that he should call her Ma instead of Mother. Bogart's emotional distance left deep scars on his mind, making him a man who seemed tough on the outside but had a complicated inner life. Bogart had a very hard life. Even though he went to well-known schools like Trinity and Phillips Academy, he did not do well in school. He turned out to be a boy who didn't follow the rules, not willing to follow the rules and often punished. He was most defiant when he was kicked out of Phillips Academy, which ended his family's hopes that he would go to Yale University. Bogart looked for meaning in other places after being pushed off the traditional road his parents wanted him to take. He joined the U.S. Navy when he was only 18 years old, right before the end of World War I. His time in the Navy was not only one of a kind, but it also left a mark that will last forever. The scar on his upper lip that makes him stand out, which was allegedly caused by an accident on the job. Different stories exist about what caused the scar, but Bogart kept it a secret, which made it an important part of his tough guy image on screen. This was the first thing that made the rebellious and strange man who he was, that people would love and get to know. When Bogart got out of the Navy in 1919, he went back to normal life but felt lost. He looked for work in sales and even as a professional chess player, but he couldn't find his true calling. During this time of chaos, an unexpected chance came along and opened the door to the world of performance arts. He got the job as a stage manager for a theater group through a friend. Even though it was a small start, being close to the stage and the lights made Bogart fall in love with acting. His journey from a rebellious kid to an aspiring actor had just started. It was his never-ending search for meaning in things that seemed like failures that set the stage for what would become a Hollywood legend. Humphrey Bogart decided to work in the arts after finding that he loved being on stage. He made a brave choice because he didn't have any family help or formal training. At first, Bogart worked behind the scenes in theaters, but he wanted to try acting because he was interested and liked performing. In 1921, he got his first chance when he got a small part in a play. The first time he stepped on stage, even though the part only had one line, he knew that playing was what he was meant to do. From that point on, despite a rough start, Bogart began a long and difficult trip to make a name for himself in the arts. For most of the 1920s, Bogart was mostly in plays, but most of the parts he played were dull and without much depth. He was often cast as handsome young men who were more concerned with how they looked than how they behaved. He played Willie with the white pants, which was a famous part during this time. It was a classic character that didn't make an impact on viewers. Despite criticism from reviewers, Bogart stayed undeterred. He viewed these years as a practical education, where he honed his knowledge of character psychology and grew accustomed to the pressures of the stage. More importantly, his struggles during this time instilled in him perseverance and resilience, traits that would later form the foundation of his brilliant film career. By the late 1920s, the entertainment industry was facing a transformation, with Hollywood emerging as a major cinematic hub. As movies became more popular, people started to like them less. Bogart saw a new chance and chose to switch from acting to film. He got a job with Fox Studios and was paid $750 a week, which was a lot of money at the time. But this change did not lead to success right away. In his early years in Hollywood, Bogart was often cast in small movies with minor parts. He often played boring or uninteresting roles, so neither audiences nor reviewers were really impressed by him. Bogart's big break didn't come until 1935, when he got a part in the play The Petrified Forest. His career took a big turn at this point. Bogart was able to break out of the limits of his earlier roles when he played Duke Manty, a dangerous but mentally complicated gangster. Fans and reviewers alike were captivated by his chilling and complex performance. Bogart was able to get into Hollywood after The Petrified Forest did well on the stage. Warner Brothers chose to make the play into a movie in 1936. Because his co-star Leslie Howard pushed for him to keep the part of Duke Manty, Bogart did. The company at first said no because they wanted to cast the more famous Edward G. Robinson instead, but Howard's persistence paid off. The movie was a big hit, and Bogart went from playing small parts to becoming a name in Hollywood worth remembering. This big break not only changed the course of his career, but it also showed how good an actor he was. This big break not only changed the course of his career, but it also showed how good an actor he was, which he had worked on very carefully while he was on stage for years. Humphrey Bogart started getting more attention in Hollywood after his big break in The Petrified Forest, but it wasn't easy for him to become a big star. In the movies that came after, like Crime School and Dead End, he was always cast as a thug. Warner Brothers and other big studios continued to see Bogart as an afterthought, seeing him more fit for villainous or supporting parts than as the lead actor. Bogart got through this with patience and drive. He didn't fight against the system. Instead, he worked on building up his tough guy image, which he did very well. This picture showed the toughness of his on-screen roles and also showed how he is in real life. They are strong, honest, and deeply thoughtful. With the movies High Sierra and The Maltese Falcon, which came out in 1941, Bogart's career really took off. In High Sierra, his part as Roy Mad Dog Earl broke the mold of one-dimensional bad guys and showed how well he could show complicated emotions. Bogart's performance showed a man who was torn between wanting to change and being stubborn and careless. A role that is usually just seen as a criminal got more meaning and humanity through that performance. Soon after, The Maltese Falcon cemented Bogart's place as a top actor. In the part of Sam Spade, a smart, cold, and very sharp private investigator, people had never seen a figure like the one Bogart created before. The movie was a huge hit and is now considered a classic in the film noir genre. Sam Spade was one of Bogart's most famous roles. It showed off his unique style, which was rough, magnetic, and memorable. But Casablanca, which came out in 1942, was the most important movie in Bogart's career. Bogart gave a great performance as a cynical bar owner in Morocco during World War II. He was both tough and vulnerable at the same time. He became a star because of the part, and it became a sign of a time in movie history. Not only did Casablanca do well at the box office, it was also called one of the best movies ever. Some of Bogart's lines, like, "Here's looking at you, kid," became famous. Even though they weren't close off-screen, his acting with Ingrid Bergman made for one of Hollywood's most famous love stories. Bogart became more than just an actor with Casablanca. It made him a societal icon. People liked everything about Bogart's character, Rick Blaine. He was a strong, mysterious man who could love deeply and make sacrifices. After Casablanca, Bogart made a string of great movies that helped him become even more famous. He met Lauren Bacall again in movies like To Have and Have Not, The Big Sleep, and Key Largo. She would later become his wife. These movies not only made Bogart more famous, but they also made him seem more like a tough but thoughtful man on screen. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his part in The African Queen, 1951, showing that he could captivate audiences in roles other than his usual ones as criminals or detectives. His performance as a rough-and-tumble barge captain showed how well he could bring complicated, multi-dimensional characters to life. But Bogart's success on screen couldn't hide the trouble in his personal life. There were a lot of contradictions and problems in his personal life. It's true that Bogart had a great life, from his failed marriages to his passionate but controversial relationship with Lauren Bacall. Come with us as we continue to look into the less well-known parts of Humphrey Bogart's personal life. He was a Hollywood star, but his flaws and scars showed that he was a real person. His life was more than just that of a great movie star, but also the story of a man who is always looking for love and peace, and whose relationships are often rough. During his first 3 marriages, Bogart seemed to be going through a lot of strong feelings without being able to keep his balance. His marriage to Helen Menken, a beautiful stage actress, was full of hope at first. Menken was a beautiful woman, but their relationship wasn't stable because they didn't get along. The marriage ended after only 1 year. Bogart was still sad about what happened and realized that love wasn't always as strong as he had hoped. Bogart was married to Mary Phillips twice, and their relationship ran for almost 10 years, but their jobs took them in different directions. Phillips did well on Broadway and found happiness and safety there, while Bogart became more and more interested in Hollywood, which was a world of glitz and glamour. After 50, but also a lot of stress, their marriage slowly fell apart because they lived far apart and had different life goals. Even though they broke up on good terms, Bogart still felt empty, like he hadn't found where he belonged. Bogart had the worst marriage of his life when he married Mayo Methot for the 3rd time. Methot was a strong woman, but she was also mentally unstable. She had a short fuse and drank too much. Because they were both very stubborn and couldn't find anything they agreed on, they had a lot of big fights. Tabloids in Hollywood called them the battling Bogarts because of how popular their fights were. During their fights, Method would often throw things at Bogart, like ashtrays and lamps, making their marriage a real battleground.